There are three lines of evidence that I think are very important as it relates to the validity of the gospel. First is the practical proof, which I already talked about. Your changed life and the changed cultures that have been affected by the message and the power of the gospel. That's a practical proof. But then there are literary proofs and there are historical proofs. There are internal evidences and external evidences. So the historical proofs, the external evidence, is that the early Christian authors in the late first century, in the early second century, it was their contention, their belief, based on being near to the actual eyewitnesses, that it was the eyewitnesses themselves or the associates of those eyewitnesses who recorded the books Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, or Levi, was a disciple of Jesus who was a follower of Christ and saw his ministry, and he recorded these things in the gospel that you know of as Matthew. That's what the external evidence of history shows us from the late first century and the early second century. John was the last of the four gospels written, probably about 90 AD, but John was an eyewitness. He was one of Jesus's followers. And then Mark and Luke, they were written not by eyewitnesses, but by near associates of eyewitnesses. Mark is highly likely the recording of Peter's message. And Peter was an eyewitness of the gospel, and Mark recorded Peter's detailing of the events, and Luke recorded Paul's detailing of the events. This is what the external evidence of history shows us from the late first century and the early second century. That is what we call the historical proofs. But then, even better than that, I think, are what we call the internal or literary proofs. The internal evidence in the Gospels that point to the fact that these were written by the actual individuals who were eyewitnesses of Jesus' life, ministry, death, burial, and resurrection.